Hello, once again, I'm B.R. Schultz. Thank you for joining me. It is week number 2 of 2024. This week I wanted to give you a forecast for the S&P 500, where I see it going. As in the title kind of speaks for itself, I'm looking for a peak in early February and a crash into late March for the final bottom. And I wanted to lay out my models and show you why I believe this. I believe that we're counting down to the start of a Great Depression, which I believe will begin in 347 weeks roughly. That's my forecast. And I believe that will start around Labor Day of 2030. So still 6 years to go, 6.5 years to go time, but I think that's what the final culmination of this is, much like 1999, 2000. I believe that the markets are working their way into like a 30-year macro peak, and then a Great Depression will ensue for 5 to 7 years after that. But I want to give you an update on the short term today. Thank you for joining me. The first graph I want to start off with was my Zigzag model. This is the original model that I've used for a lot of my macro views. And so basically I've found a technique that seems to call out crash lows. And so basically it's taking the graph, making 25-point intervals notated by the black horizontal lines, and then taking just 2 hits off of the jagged zigzag line, and it projects out in the future and predicts where the bottom will be. So essentially you're seeing it called out the mid-late May of 2022 as a bottom. It called out the late June of 2022 as a bottom. The October bottom, I think, was called out with points much farther back in time, which wouldn't allow for proper presentation, so I had to omit that part. You can also see how it called out the bottom at the end of October 2023, and then it's calling out for a bottom at the end of March of 2024. You can see that the model was stuck to the ceiling in late July of 2023, and then it made kind of a 5-wave move down. So when it was stuck to the ceiling, it dropped down into late August, so that was wave 1, then popped for wave 2 up. Wave 3 down took us into late September, and then pop 4 up, and then pop the final wave 5 down into late October of 2023. So that was a 5-wave move down. And then you can also kind of look at it vice versa as well. You could say that there's a 5-wave move up starting in late August, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the 5th wave being at the end of December. And so I believe that we're starting a 5-wave down into end of March here, much like the end of July. So I believe that the green arrow, or that point in the future, is the end of 5 waves down. So usually the first wave down is kind of a soft wave. It doesn't really get much attention. It's kind of a quick sell-off. I believe on the futures on tradingview.com, SPX500 USD, we went down to the 34 simple moving average, daily simple moving average, and then we kind of pop back up. So this will take some time for the zigzag to pop back up. So essentially I believe that it's going to peak in early February, obviously from the title of this presentation. I think the Fed meets in the end of January. So essentially we want to see the graph zig and zag all the way back up for wave 2 up, and then I think wave 3 down. It is interesting how the markets crashed in early 2018 in Q1, in 2020 Q1, in 2022 Q1, and yes, again here in early 2024 Q1. So it does seem to be repetitive. It does seem to be a pattern. But I believe that the end of the storm will, and the bottom of this crash pattern, I think, will occur into the end of March. And I'm sure there will be a Fed date around there, because they always meet every 6 weeks, I believe. So I think if they meet at the end of January, that would give them 6 weeks into mid-March. So that would make sense. So it could be right around the Fed meeting, or the Fed could, trigger one last sell-off or something. But nonetheless, the model's calling for some type of bottom at the end of March, it looks like. So let's look at the short-term models. Okay, so this is my MJ23 algo I use, or the purple wave, and essentially what I try to do is find a 3-point trend or a 2-point trend to a horizontal. Most of the time it's to this bottom horizontal, or what I call the top horizontal, up underneath the signage up there at the top, underneath the word daily, underneath the word forecast use only. That's the top, what I call the top line. So basically you have control chart of plus 50, negative 50, and so that's basically where I'm trying to find where I believe the pivot points will be. And so I believe that the S&P 500 will peak. The forecast is that the S&P will peak around the February 5th or 6th or 7th date. I'll say 6th, then plus or minus 1 business day. So I think that would be, let's see, the 6th is a Tuesday, so that would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the first, let's see, that's, yeah, the first full week of February. So I think that's where the peak will be. The Super Bowl is, I think, February 11th, so basically it's calling for a peak prior to the Super Bowl, if you will. And so that's the 15-minute model. That's what the 15 stands for. So let's move on to the next short-term model. This is a 5-minute model. Basically, the algo has a little bit of intelligence baked in, I guess you might call it. I don't know if it's intelligence or not, right? Maybe stupidity. But nonetheless, it's baked into the purple wave, the MJ23 wave. Essentially, I believe that's pointing out to roughly February 6th-ish, plus or minus 1 business day. So I think that's where the peak will finally be. Yeah, so I've shown you the 15, the 5. And obviously, as we get closer and closer, I believe that markets will hopefully give some better insight. But again, if you go back to that first zigzag graph, you can see that it's on its way down. So I think this is wave 1 of a 5-way move down into end of March. So we would need a wave 2 up of sorts, right, on a more macro scale. So I think wave 2 will end roughly again in that first full week of February, just before the Super Bowl. Let's move on to the next model. This is the SH model. This is a 2-minute model. That's what the 2 stands for. And essentially, I think it might be a 5 count. It could be a 5 count. Depends on if the point number 4 is counted as 2 points or not. But nonetheless, it seems to have some type of 1, 2, 3 touch points into roughly, again, that February 6th time frame. So I believe that all these points should get us close to, I think, a macro peak in the market. Some of you are probably wondering where I've been for a long time after multiple failures, and oh man, it's been pathetic on my part, to say the least. I failed at the Nasdaq. I failed at a bunch of penny stocks, and so I wanted to go back to what I was originally really good at, and that's the S&P 500. And for some reason, all the models really like the S&P 500. And so even though my biggest failure was on the Nasdaq a year ago, I figured, you know what, time to admit that I made huge mistakes, that I've been a huge failure with the Nasdaq, with some of my other stocks that I picked, and go back to what the model does best with. And again, that's S&P 500. So obviously, I would trade anything that would mimic the S&P 500. So your SH, your SPY, your UPROs, your SDS, things of that nature. So those are the things that I'm going to probably use over the course of time, should these videos become, highly accurate or somewhat highly accurate after I make them. The plan is maybe to make one of these videos a week. I'll turn off the comments because obviously I've been such a failure that yeah, I would probably just eat dirt and eat crow for a long time if people were to rip me apart online. So completely understandable that would be the case, but nonetheless, it doesn't make any sense for me to have to keep reading that forever. But if I don't respond to your emails, it's just the same reason. I admit I'm a failure to everyone. I admit that I lost a lot of money, and I admit that yeah, my tries were pathetic, and there's probably a few of you out there that want to curse and swear at me, and that's perfectly fine. I probably deserve it because I thought my calls were going to be great at first, and then yeah, it proved me to be an idiot. So I admit my stupidity before the world, and yeah, hopefully you'll find it in your heart to forgive me for some of my stupid calls, some of my horrible failures. That's why I always say forecast use only, because I realize, yeah, even with models, my ego or my blindness can cause me to fail. So hopefully this is highly accurate. My goal again is to make a video or two a week on the lunch hour or maybe after work, so that I can keep the video log going of my S&P forecasts. And obviously the donation aspect has helped me out greatly in 2022, so I figure if I can be of service and stay the heck away from stocks and from everything else and just stick only to the S&P 500, hopefully this creates value for the viewer. And then obviously hopefully at some point after wounds have healed in the viewer's eyes, maybe I'll start getting donations again. But again, if I don't respond to you right away, it's not because I'm trying to be standoffish or prideful. I'm just not probably going to read any comments because, yeah, I realize I've been a huge failure. And again, so please don't take it personally if I haven't responded to you, or if I don't respond to you. It's because I know my own failure and I know my own faults, and so that's why it doesn't do me any good to read what other people have to say. I'm sure I'm beating myself up enough, and I'm sorry. I apologize. So hopefully this forecast for early February does very well. So anyways, hope you all enjoy it, and until next time, I'm B.R. Schultz.